Some of you are too young to remember this moment. It was actually a decade ago when Britney Spears was caught on camera shaving her head and attacking a car with an umbrella. I was 20. I remember rolling my eyes and just thinking, oh, what a crazy celebrity. But then I saw this meme last year, and this time I understood it. Being an adult is hard. Sometimes I don't want to get out of bed. And sometimes you get overwhelmed and you throw tantrums like kids. So I get it, Brittany. You weren't crazy. You were just having a bad day. My students know I have bad days all the time. They can tell already when they come into class if it's going to be a good day or a bad day based on my face. My new perspective came with age and experience, yes, but it's also about being able to look at the same thing in a different light. The older I get, the more I understand. Just by eliminating the last line, this meme probably makes a whole lot more sense to a whole lot more people, right? Congratulations, you've been enlightened. What exactly does it mean to be enlightened, you wonder? I consider it to be a paradigm shift. What is a paradigm shift? I can already hear some of my students asking, well, I'm an English teacher, so I have to come prepared with definitions to words that I don't understand myself. According to Merriam-Webster, a paradigm shift is an important change that happens when the usual way of thinking about or doing something is replaced by a new and different way. I see the meme differently now because I had my own Britney Spears moment. On October 5th, 2012, I cut all my hair off. I was 25. By the way, I'm 30. I'm not that old, but. I remember the moment of the first snip. When the first chunk of hair fell to the ground, I actually flinched. I was actually in shock. When I started talking about cutting my hair, everyone tried to convince me not to do it. They said my hair was so beautiful. One person even said it was my best feature. I was very offended by the comment. But I was more paranoid that the person was right. I wanted to cut my hair, but I was afraid of exposing myself to ridicule. I didn't feel confident enough to withstand all the stares if I looked terrible without hair. What if I had all kind of weird lumps in the back of my head that I wasn't aware of, you know? I felt like I would be naked without hair, without anything to hide my face if I felt insecure or uncomfortable. So it was a tough decision for me. But I've gotten ahead of myself. Before I can discuss the paradigm shift I had from cutting my hair off, I have to talk about the events leading up. I spent 5 months in India when I was 23. I showed up to India naive and truly inexperienced. Somehow I assumed that I would fit right in. See, I grew up in the Caribbean, a very multicultural place. I had Indian neighbors, so I said, oh, I'm going to India, no problem. Random side story, naive as I was, actually, as I was checking into the airport for my flight to India, I happened to be standing in line with Indian Jamaicans, and completely randomly. And we started talking in patois, the local language of my country. So I'm like, oh yeah, I'll go to India, I'll be fine. Not the case. But while I was busy taking in the beauty of the country and taking in all the pictures that I could possibly can, people around me were preoccupied with taking pictures of me. I couldn't understand why I was receiving so many stares. At first I thought that there was something on my face. I didn't have a strong sense of self at the time, and so every time someone took a picture of me, I would self-consciously touch my face, like, is there something on my face? I would cringe. It felt so invasive, like Britney Spears, having her private moment become an internet meme. I understood what it must feel like to be famous. It sucks, actually. It's not nice, not a good feeling. I started covering my face and hair to draw less attention to myself whenever I was in public. But that didn't always work. So I became depressed. Some days I was too depressed to even leave my hotel room. I was well aware that I was privileged to be traveling for several months through a foreign country. Not everybody gets that experience, and I knew that, that was a cool thing that I got to do. But at the tender age of 23, I could mostly only think about how uncomfortable and self-conscious I was everywhere I went. The thing that was most disturbing about it, for me, was how alienating the experience was. I rarely ever felt in those crowds that I belonged. It felt more like I was a zoo animal on display. I gathered as much that it was my hair that was the main curiosity, but I couldn't figure out why it was such a big deal. Until one day, with one question, I gained the clarity that had eluded me for months. A woman at an antique shop in Tamil Nadu asked me, "Why do you wear your hair like that?" Like what? Like a man, like a sadhu. In Hinduism, a sadhu is a religious holy person, and they're usually men. For me, the irony of being compared to a sadhu is that I was raised in a Rastafarian household in Jamaica, and Rastafarianism has a lot in common with Indian sadhu culture. Both groups reject materialism, choosing to live a simpler life of non-possession, and they both wear the telltale knotted locks. Without realizing it, that woman had given me a gift. She offered me an opportunity to reflect on the fact that I had already been connected to the people I felt so alienated from. The same hair that was a point of anxiety for me had actually been all along a link in a foreign land. But upon further contemplation, I realized that my hair was never the problem. My smile, my eyes, my profile are pretty much the same, with or without my locks. It was my perspective that was the problem. All my experiences in India were being tainted with my own insecurity and self-consciousness. I left India with a desire to continue pushing myself out of my comfort zone. Hence, the big chop. But it didn't happen overnight. I still needed to develop my sense of self. One of the great things about social media is that you can now document down to the minute things you've said and done in the past. Apparently, on November 17th, 2010, just a few days after my 24th birthday, I sent a message to my friend about not having any sense of self. I completely forgot having said this, though. She got in touch with me out of the blue a few months ago and sent me a screenshot of the message, hence the above conversation. This is what the original message said. "I keep thinking about cutting my hair all off, but I can't see myself as the type of woman with enough sense of self to pull off a shaved head." What I meant by sense of self was self-confidence and self-acceptance. Even though that Tamil lady offered me some wisdom to reflect on, for the most part, I still had terrible time the first time in India. I remember my last days in India, rather than enjoying myself, I was too busy being miserable and counting down the days until I could leave. If you asked me then if I would ever go back to India, the answer would have been, hell no. But it's a good thing we grow older and wiser and experience fundamental shifts that help us to grow. Cutting my hair for the first time was one of those moments in which I experienced a paradigm shift. Considering how apprehensive I had been, the feeling of freedom and happiness I felt with chopping my hair off was this wonderful surprise that was unexpected to me. I came to realize that I did indeed have that sense of self. Chopping my hair also made me braver. So I wanted to revisit negative past experiences as a result, and India was a major one. These images are of me traveling to India in 2015, a few months before my 28th birthday. I had opted for a 1-month visa, not knowing if my sense of self would fail me and I would chicken out and leave early. I regret that decision because after a month, I didn't want to leave. This time around, I had a blast in India. On the left is me in Darjeeling on the famous toy train. On the right is me in Sikkim close to the border of Tibet, with my Sikimese guide, Raul, who, by the way, loves Usain Bolt and Tupac Shakur. He had to tell me that. Rather than shying away from the camera, I welcome opportunities to take pictures with locals and to have my picture taken because in all actuality, it's an opportunity to form bonds and make memories with others. So what were my takeaways from my shift in perspective? Feeling so uncomfortable and self-conscious about people around me forced me to shift my understanding of myself in relation to others. So, a seemingly negative situation can have a positive outcome. The trip to India forced me to confront my insecurities. In doing so, I gained self-acceptance. My sense of self came from a major shift. I started valuing how I viewed myself over how others viewed me. So your sense of self must be first and foremost rooted in your own self-acceptance. Even though I had been contemplating cutting my hair since 2010, I didn't actually do it until 2012, 2 years. Growth takes time, and it's often painful, which is why they call it growing pains. You guys are probably way too young, but there actually was a show back in the day called Growing Pains, starring the young Leonardo DiCaprio. He was very beautiful. Not anymore, sorry, Leo. What you need to remember is that you have to be patient with yourself because growth takes time. So now that you're a couple minutes older and hopefully wiser than before I began, you now have a more perspective and context for why I chose this meme. The older I get, the more I understand Britney Spears' 2007 meltdown. Even though you probably were like, what, 5 then? It's okay, but remember, the older I get, the more I understand. But most importantly, the older I get, the more enlightened I become. Thank you for listening.